Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah.
The names alone, they just conjure this potent mix of like rebellion and romance, right?
Absolutely. This image of young lovers taking on the world.
But, beneath that sort of glossy veneer lies a much darker reality. We're talking a brutal and deadly crime spree.
Mm-hmm.
So today, we're diving deep,
Mm-hmm.
trying to uncover who Bonnie and Clyde truly were, really stripping away the legend and getting to the heart of their story.
And we're using historical accounts analysis,
Yeah.
trying to piece together the real picture.
Exactly. We know you want to be well-informed, get the important stuff without getting bogged down, and, well, that's what we're aiming for here.
And you really can't talk about them without talking about the Great Depression. That's the backdrop, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A time of immense hardship that, it undeniably shaped their perspectives, and, crucially, how the public reacted to them.
Right.
So the big questions we're tackling, were they just, desperate criminals?
Mm-hmm.
Or did the public maybe initially see something else in them?
What drove them? What were their motivations?
Yeah. And why does their story still hold us captive, nearly a century later?
It's that tension right from the start, like you said, this enduring romantic image versus the documented violence.
It really makes you think about how we build these narratives, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Especially around figures who operate outside the law.
Mm-hmm. We cling to certain stories.
Definitely. And understanding that contrast, it really starts with looking at their early lives, their formative years. Let's begin with Bonnie Parker.
Okay.
Born in Rowena, a small West Texas town, her life took a pretty big turn when she was just 4. Her father died.
Right, and the family moved. Her mother took them to Cement City, West Dallas, looking for a fresh start, basically.
And what's striking about young Bonnie, from the accounts, is this sense of a bright, vibrant young woman, loved literature, poetry.
Yeah, she had this independent streak, apparently.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, what her life might have been like otherwise.
It does. Then she gets married really young, 16, to Roy Thornton.
Yes. And he wasn't exactly stable, was he? Had a criminal history, ended up in prison.
But they never actually divorced. And she wore his ring right up until her death. That's quite a detail, isn't it?
It hints at something lingering there, amidst all the chaos that followed.
So after Thornton's locked up, Bonnie's working as a waitress. But then the depression hits hard, the cafe closes, she's unemployed.
It's this stark contrast, isn't it? From this promising young girl to someone really constrained by circumstances.
It's a sharp descent.
And it really hammers home the impact of those wider economic forces. How much did that widespread hardship, the lack of opportunity, push people towards certain choices?
It's the unavoidable context, isn't it? You can't ignore the era.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's turn to Clyde. Clyde Barrow, born near Tellico, Texas, into, deep poverty.
Yeah, and like Bonnie's family, they also migrated, their farm failed, and they ended up in West Dallas.
In really squalid conditions. I mean, living under a wagon on the Trinity River floodplain, they called it the Devil's Back Porch.
Grim, just incredibly grim. And it's a real contrast with Bonnie's early life, even with her family struggles. Clyde seems just defined by that grinding poverty from the start.
Yet he had aspirations too, didn't he? Wanted to be a musician.
Yeah, played guitar and saxophone, apparently. It's that reminder, isn't it? Even in the toughest spots, people still have dreams.
It sort of challenges the later image, the hardened criminal. But he also had influences pushing him the other way, his older brother, Buck.
Right, Buck got him into petty crime early on. Stealing turkeys, then cars.
His first arrests were for exactly that. Stolen turkeys, auto theft. He apparently held some legitimate jobs here and there, but
It seems like they were mostly cover for escalating criminal stuff. Safecracking, store robberies, more car thefts.
he even got arrested down in Waco just for being with some other wanted guys.
So when you put their early lives side by side, that shared background, poor Texas Great Depression, it looms really large, doesn't it?
Definitely. Both of them were looking for an escape in their own way. Bonnie from, a failed marriage, being jobless. Clyde from poverty, this dead-end cycle of petty crime.
And those desires, those parallel paths, eventually converged.
January 1930, West Dallas. That's the moment they meet.
Yeah, the story usually goes it was at a friend's house, Clarence Clay's place, maybe a sister's house.
And the popular image is Bonnie making hot chocolate when Clyde walks in.
Right. And accounts say there was this immediate spark, a really powerful attraction, especially from Bonnie's side.
Well, think about her situation then. Still married, but separated. No job. Probably feeling pretty hopeless.
And Clyde walks in, offers maybe excitement, rebellion, something completely different from our current life.
A different path, yeah. even if it was a dangerous one. But that initial spark, it got interrupted pretty quickly.
Right. Clyde gets arrested not long after they meet. Burglary, car theft again.
And this is where Bonnie really shows her hand, doesn't she?
It's a crucial moment. Smuggling that Colt pistol to him in the Waco jail. I mean, that's not just sympathy, that's direct involvement.
It's a huge step. Shows her commitment, right?
Absolutely, a real turning point.
And that gun. It helps Clyde escape with a couple of other inmates. March 1930.
But freedom didn't last long. They caught him again up in Ohio, and this time, the sentence was much harsher.
This is when he ends up at Eastham Prison Farm. Notorious place.
Just brutal conditions. And it's at Eastham where he commits his first murder, a fellow inmate.
And then there's the toe incident, persuading another inmate to chop off 2 of his toes with an axe.
Just imagine the desperation, trying to avoid that crushing labor. It speaks volumes about Eastham.
Horrific. And the irony is, he gets paroled not long after anyway. His mother's pleas apparently help.
But Eastham changed him deeply. He came out hating the system, vowing he'd never go back.
So he's released early 1932. Tries to go straight, maybe, but the Depression's still raging, no real opportunities.
Sound familiar? Echoes Bonnie's situation earlier, and so he slips back into robbery.
And this time, Bonnie makes the choice. She joins him.
And she knew what she was getting into, didn't she? She'd already been arrested with the gang before, after that hardware store robbery. Got off that time, but still.
Right. And Clyde and Raymond Hamilton had already committed that murder in Hillsborough, store owner John Booker. The stakes were incredibly high.
So when she got released from that earlier arrest, she makes this stark choice. She commits fully to Clyde, knowing the potential consequences.
It really underscores that powerful connection between them. And again, the sheer desperation of the times. Maybe that dangerous path felt like the only path open to them.
It's hard to separate their choices from the economic reality they were facing.
And so begins the infamous crime spree, the Barrow gang. Their methods, though, they weren't exactly master criminals, were they?
No, not really. They mostly hit small, vulnerable places, little stores, gas stations, maybe some rural banks.
And the money they got, usually pretty small amounts. The biggest haul known was less than, what, $1,500?
Yeah, it speaks more to desperation, maybe keeping fueled up and moving rather than some grand criminal plan.
But, and this is crucial, Clyde loved that M1918 Brownie automatic rifle, the BAR.
Right, that gave them serious firepower. A huge advantage in shootouts with local police who were often outgunned.
So that's a key part of their strategy. Overwhelming force if confronted.
Definitely. Avoid capture at all costs.
And they were constantly moving. Clyde was apparently an amazing driver, knew the back roads inside out, loved those fast Ford V8s.
Stealing cars constantly, changing license plates, that was standard procedure.
And they were clever about crossing state lines, weren't they? Exploiting those jurisdictional limits. Operating all over Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Louisiana.
Yeah, New Mexico, Arkansas, even further north sometimes, made it really hard for law enforcement back then to coordinate a pursuit.
But they still took huge risks, didn't they? Sneaking back to Dallas to see family.
Those visits were dangerous, but clearly important to them.
And then there's that weird pattern of kidnapping lawmen or robbery victims.
And then letting them go, sometimes miles away, often unharmed, even giving them money sometimes.
That's so contradictory. Adds another layer of complexity or maybe confusion about who they were.
That inconsistency probably fed into that muddled public image, especially early on. But, those occasional acts of, let's say, relative leniency, they don't cancel out the violence.
No, absolutely not. That's a vital point. Now, the gang itself, it wasn't static, was it?
No, very fluid. Bonnie and Clyde were the core, obviously. But others came and went.
We had Clyde's brother Buck and his wife Blanche.
Right. W.G. Jones was a key figure for a while. Raymond Hamilton, Ralph Fultz, later Henry Methvin.
Lots of internal tension, too, apparently. People leaving, disagreements.
It wasn't a stable crew. More like individuals drawn into their orbit for different reasons, different lengths of time, often ending badly.
And the injuries definitely played a part in ratcheting up the desperation, right? Bonnie's leg being badly burned in that car crash.
Yeah, that incapacitated her for a while. And then Buck's head wound, which was ultimately fatal, that must have increased the sense of being cornered, the recklessness.
And all this activity, it left this trail of escalating violence, especially against law enforcement.
You see that progression clearly. After the Hillsborough store owner murder, there's the shootout in Stringtown, Oklahoma. First officer killed.
Then Joplin, Missouri. Another shootout. 2 more officers dead.
Yeah.
And that's where the police found that undeveloped film.
Ah, yes, the photos and Bonnie's poems. That discovery was huge for their public image, wasn't it?
Massively. We'll come back to that. But the violence continues. Bonnie's accident, Buck's death after shootouts in Platte City and Dexfield Park.
The Eastham prison break in '34. Bonnie and Clyde weren't the triggermen there, but an escapee they helped freed killed Major Krausen. That really intensified the manhunt.
And then those really notorious killings in the spring of '34. The highway patrolmen Wheeler and Murphy near Grapevine, Texas.
Yeah, Easter Sunday. That one caused a massive public backlash.
Followed not long after by Constable Calvin Campbell in Commerce, Oklahoma.
That list of victims, it just grows and grows. It shows a clear escalation from robbery to deadly force, particularly against anyone trying to stop them.
Exactly. Because while parts of the media were maybe starting to build this romantic story,
Fueled by those Joplin photos, right? Bonnie with the cigar, them posing with guns. And her poetry.
yeah, it all fed into this gun mall image, even a sort of twisted Robin Hood vibe sometimes, this dangerous, alluring outlaw couple. Why do you think that resonated so much back then?
Well, think about the Depression again. Widespread resentment towards banks, towards the government. The system felt broken to a lot of people.
So maybe seeing anyone defy that system felt satisfying. Vicariously, at least.
Possibly, for some. And the media loves a good story, right? They jumped on the sensational aspects, the youth, the romance, often glossing over the brutality.
But the stark reality, we have to keep coming back to it. 13 documented murders, mostly law enforcement.
These weren't Robin Hoods stealing from the rich to give to the poor. They were, frankly, mass murderers by the end. They terrified communities.
And that Robin Hood idea, it just doesn't hold up. They hit small stores, gas stations. The halls were tiny, like we said.
Yeah. So the question is, how much actual support did they have during their run versus how much they were romanticized later? It's probably less than the legend suggests.
It feels crucial to challenge that romantic view. Their victims were ordinary people, officers doing their jobs.
Right. And while the Depression definitely created disillusionment, maybe even a bit of tolerance for outlaws in some quarters.
But that shouldn't be confused with endorsing murder.
Exactly. The economic desperation is key context. It explains the environment, but not necessarily the public approval of their specific actions.
Yeah, whatever sliver of, misplaced sympathy might have existed, it vanished pretty quickly as the violence got worse and more publicized.
Those Grapevine murders, the highway patrolman, April '34, that seems like a real turning point.
Yeah, the reports were graphic. Eyewitness accounts, maybe embellished, painted Bonnie as particularly vicious, firing into a wounded officer.
It shifted her image dramatically in the press, from maybe a reluctant accomplice or romantic partner to a cold-blooded killer.
And then killing Constable Campbell soon after just sealed it. The public outcry was huge. Calls to bring them down dead or alive.
The media narrative flipped completely. Now they were just vicious public enemies. Any romance was drowned out by the sheer brutality.
So public opinion turns hard against them. The manhunt ramps up. But catching them was still really tough.
Yeah, for several reasons. Their constant movement across state lines, like we mentioned, that jurisdictional mess really hampered early efforts.
Clyde's driving. He was apparently brilliant behind the wheel, especially in those powerful Ford V8s they favored.
And their firepower, often better armed than the local police they ran into.
Plus, maybe early on, that mixed public perception sometimes made it harder for police to get cooperation, though that definitely changed later.
Sure, but the tide really started to turn organizationally, too.
Right. At first it was fragmented. Local sheriffs, police departments. But then the FBI, the Bureau of Investigation, then got involved. May 1933.
Because of the Dyer Act, transporting stolen cars across state lines became a federal crime. That gave the feds jurisdiction.
And their involvement brought more coordination. Wanted posters, tracking movements, sharing information. They started focusing on connections, like the Methvin family.
Finding that stolen Ford in Michigan traced back to Clyde's aunt. That was a key federal lead.
And then there's the Texas side, the Texas Rangers. Unofficially at first, but then very officially.
Through Frank Hamer, legendary ranger, the Texas prison system, specifically Lee Simmons, brought him in.
After that Eastham breakout and Major Krausen's murder in January '34, that really lit a fire under the authorities.
Simmons persuades Hamer to lead the hunt, February '34, and Hamer was relentless.
He had a reputation, broad authority, and a different approach, right? More about intelligence, predicting their moves.
Exactly. He studied Clyde's patterns. Those circular routes, always circling back towards family in Dallas. He understood how Barrow thought.
Didn't he basically live in his car for months?
Pretty much. Over 100 days just tracking them, anticipating where they'd show up next. Meticulous.
And he put together that final posse, a mix of Texas and Louisiana lawmen, Hamer, Galt, Alcorn, Hinton from Dallas County, Jordan and Oakley from Louisiana.
It showed that necessary interjurisdictional cooperation finally clicking into place. Learning from past failures.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Law enforcement had to adopt some of the same tools, fast cars, good road knowledge, but combine it with better strategy and teamwork to finally corner them.
Their crime spree inadvertently pushed law enforcement to modernize and cooperate more effectively across state lines, a lasting impact.
Which brings us finally to Gibbsland, Louisiana, the ambush. And it all hinged on betrayal, didn't it?
It did. Henry Methvin and his family were the key. The posse had intelligence that the gang used the Methvin place near Gibbsland as a hideout sometimes.
And then Henry gets separated from Bonnie and Clyde down in Shreveport. That created the opening.
The authorities struck a deal with Ivy Methvin, Henry's dad. Ivy helped set the trap.
In exchange for leniency for Henry, at least in Texas. Didn't cover his churches elsewhere, like Oklahoma, right?
Correct. A crucial distinction. So the plan was set. Ivy parks his truck on the side of Highway 154, pulls off a wheel, makes it look like he's broken down.
Banking on Clyde stopping to help if he recognized the truck, driving right into the trap.
And that's exactly what happened. Wednesday morning, May 23rd, 1934, about 9:15 a.m.
The posse Hamer and the others hidden in the bushes along the road, waiting.
Bonnie and Clyde approach in their Ford V8, Bonnie supposedly eating a sandwich. Clyde sees Ivy's truck, slows down.
And the posse just opens up.
Yeah.
Instantly. Accounts differ on whether any warning was given, but the firing was immediate and intense.
Deputy Prentice Oakley is often credited with the first shots. Killed Clyde instantly, most likely. Then just a hail of bullets.
Something like 130, maybe up to 167 rounds fired into that car in seconds.
Utterly overwhelming firepower, reflecting the determination to stop them right there. No chance of escape. No more shootouts.
They died almost instantly. The coroner's report was gruesome. Something like 17 distinct entrance wounds on Barrow, 26 on Parker.
Just riddled. And the scene afterwards, it became this bizarre, macabre spectacle.
Yeah, people swarming the car, trying to grab souvenirs, shell casings, bits of clothing, hair, even reportedly trying to cut off fingers or ears. Grim.
They found a whole arsenal in the car, of course. Bars, shotguns, pistols, thousands of rounds of ammo, stacks of license plates.
The bodies were towed to Arcadia, to a furniture store that doubled as a funeral parlor. The town was completely overwhelmed with onlookers.
That intense public fascination, even in death, just wanting to see them.
And they weren't buried together, despite Bonnie apparently wanting that. Separate funerals in Dallas.
But huge crowds turned out for both. Over 20,000 estimated for Bonnie's funeral. A final, strange testament to their legend.
It really is. And that notoriety, it just continued to grow, morphing into this enduring legend, despite all the brutality.
Yeah, the Depression context, their youth, that narrative of unwavering devotion, the media hype. It all fed into it.
And Bonnie's poetry, found after Joplin, The Story of Suicide Cell, The Trail's End, it gave this voice from inside the story this sense of doom, didn't it?
It did. It humanized them in a way, ironically. Added to the romantic tragedy angle, and those photos, too. Candid shots, posing, they added to the mystique.
They made them seem relatable, almost, in a weird way, which is dangerous, considering the reality.
And that transformation from notorious criminals to cultural icons, it's fascinating. The 1967 movie, the Warren Beatty Faye Dunaway film.
Oh, yeah, that was huge. It cemented their image for a whole new generation, didn't it?
Absolutely. It really tapped into the 1960s counterculture vibe, rebels against the establishment, beautiful, doomed youth. It often overshadows the history now.
And it kicked off this whole wave of interest. Countless books since then, history, memoirs from family or gang members, even fiction.
Music, too. So many songs across different genres. Merle Haggard, Serge Gainsbourg, Georgie Fame back then.
And even now, you hear references in hip-hop, pop music, Jay-Z and Beyonce, Taylor Swift. Bonnie and Clyde is like shorthand for that ride-or-die couple.
Right. TV shows, documentaries, stage musicals. They just keep reappearing in popular culture.
They've become this archetype, haven't they? The outlaw couple.
Exactly. Young, attractive, on the run, fiercely loyal, defying the rules, heading for that tragic end. It's a powerful template.
It taps into something about rebellion, maybe, freedom, fatal love.
I think so. And Bonnie and Clyde is just part of the language now. Even that pop psychology term, Bonnie and Clyde syndrome,
Right.
for hybristophilia attraction to criminals.
So they symbolize rebellion, maybe a desire for fame, freedom, but also the deadly cost of that path.
It hits on universal themes. And even in Dallas today, you see that complex relationship with their memory, preserving sites like the Barrow gas station, but acknowledging the pain they caused.
This constant negotiation, isn't it, between the myth, the media portrayal, and the historical facts.
A negotiation that continues in academia, in art, and just in general public fascination. Their story is definitely more than just a crime tale.
Yeah, it really reflects a specific time, its anxieties, its desperation.
And as we said, ironically led to changes, advancements in law enforcement. A strange legacy.
But it always comes back to that tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The romantic myth versus the brutal reality.
It's so important to remember that. The glamorous image can easily obscure the terror they caused, the lives they took.
Absolutely. Their story is just such a powerful example of how myths are made, how public memory gets shaped over time.
It really is a compelling case study in desperation, media influence, and why some outlaw legends stick, no matter the truth.
So for you listening, maybe think about that. How can tough times breed such desperation? How much does the media shape how we see people, heroes or villains? And why do these particular outlaw stories endure, even when we know the ugly truth?
Which parts of their story resonate most today, and what does that say about us? It's definitely something to mull over.